So it's hard to get those guys who don't have game experience to practice at a high level after 10 practices. So I think it's just a whole experience thing. When you have a veteran team, I say it's a little easier to get practice going and keep it going, but it's harder when you have a lot of younger people.
So what do you do next, like yourself or maybe other leaders in the team, to make sure that doesn't happen again?
I mean, the best thing we can do and are doing is just helping out the young guys as much as possible. Every time we see something on the field, we run over and go tell the guy what to do or what they should have done. So it's more of a thing of just getting it in their head that they need to do this and instead of that, because we've learned that the last couple of years.
I think a lot of guys would point to Jason Kafinda as being the vocal guy last year.
Yeah.
Is there a one vocal guy this season yet, or are you guys still kind of waiting?
In particular, or just overall?
Defense in particular.
Okay. Probably say Nick Scott. He's been a special teams captain and he's been on defense for a couple years. I mean, it's kind of hard because a lot of practice we're split up or in our positions, but usually the older guys like Koa for the linebackers, I know he's helping out a lot. Jay Cooper for D-line, me, Sharif, and Torrance, and those guys. But I would say Nick Scott's probably the most vocal. Gets us going sometimes.
How's your spring been? What have you wanted to accomplish? How do you feel like you've gotten far along with that?
Pretty much just focusing on my speed and my technique. I've lost a good bit of weight, so I'm just trying to get back on my speed because I'm pretty much going to stay at DN mostly this year. So just working on the little things because I've experienced a lot. So when I see stuff happen and I help out those young guys, it helps me out too.
How do you feel about staying out at end versus kicking inside on third down?
It's definitely easier. Having all that space and not having to deal with the heavier guys, it's definitely a better thing to deal with, so I like it.
I'm working with Coach Spencer over the last couple of years. What's been the biggest lesson and the biggest takeaway that you've learned from him?
Just the mentality he wants us to play with. Had 40 sacks the last 3 years, and a lot of it's not, I guess you could say a lot of it's technique, but a lot of it's just mentality too. Getting after the quarterback and going as hard as you can every play. So usually after every practice, like he did today, he was firing us up because we had a really good practice as a D-line. So we had a bunch of sacks. So it's usually just how you play and how you rush and stuff like that.
What's it like maybe trying to tackle or tag, I guess, right now, Miles Sanders in the backfield?
It's definitely easier tagging because you don't got to do as much. I don't know how easy it would be tackling. So sometimes on tag off, if you don't get the right fit or something like that, coach will blow the whistle and say you didn't do it right. So it's definitely easier to tag off, thankfully.
But I mean, what's kind of his strength? What makes him maybe trickier or elusive?
Definitely his speed. When you're trying to catch him from the backside or you're trying to cut him off somewhere, he'll definitely beat to it. So I think his speed is the number one thing.
Is there anybody else with the running backs that have kind of impressed you so far this spring?
Mark Allen's been doing a pretty good job. He's been catching the ball a lot out of the backfield. He's a pretty shifty guy. He's hard to tag off too because of how low he gets and how shifty he is. So he's been doing well.
Is he a guy that's grown? Is he different from maybe he was a couple of years ago?
I think he's, not that he hasn't grown, but I think he's always been good. He just, obviously Saquon's in front of him, so it's hard to get him in there. But I think he's learned a lot from Saquon and getting a lot of reps. So I think he's always been pretty good, and he's just kind of getting his time to show it now.
What have you learned about this team through 10, 11 practices now? You mentioned it's a young group, but what's different about them now? What have you noticed?
We're definitely getting like just the overall mood down and getting everyone's kind of feel for it. So like today I saw Jesse Luketa make a big play and he got all hype, and I didn't see that the first couple practices, but now these younger guys are making plays and they're stepping up and stuff, so it's definitely a big change from the first couple practices.
What was the play?
I think it was just a run play, but I think he had a perfect fit. He came in there and tagged off, I think for maybe 1 yard gain or a no gainer, so he was pretty hype.
What's it like being on a young team? You go from being from a mature team to now kind of described as young. What's that transition like for somebody who isn't part of the young group?
Yeah, it's definitely different. Usually like 2 years ago and 3 years ago I was listening to Carl Nassib and Sickles and Schwann and all them and taking in all their information, but now I got to do that to the other guys like Etor and Shane and Daniel Joseph and all of them, so it's kind of just switching roles, but I learned a lot from those guys, so it was good.
Is there frustration sometimes when you had guys who knew what they were doing and now there's the growing process again?
No, because it was like the same thing for us when I was my first spring and my first camp and all that. I had to get the little things down and really focus and hone in on the plays just like these guys do. So it's just like a rotation that happens every 2-3 years. It's normal.
Who are some of the guys inside, the tackles, younger guys that might have impressed you so far? Who have you seen grown at least?
Definitely Antonio, Sheldon, and Fred. Fred's been killing it. He's a big guy. I think he's like 317 pounds now. So Spence always talks about how he's so heavy he shouldn't even be blocked or anything because how big and strong he is. And Antonio has definitely worked on his speed and his power a lot. Those guys definitely have been stepping up. I think they'll see the field this year.
Any big play one of them made either today or recently?
I would say it's one-on-ones. Fred's been killing it in the one-on-ones. He's been bull rushing guys. He's been getting around them. He's been using his strength, so he's been doing good.
What's a